this particular conversation wants to go on kind of what does human agency mean around agentic technology, around creating agents, around agents that do autonomous work and all the rest. But I still think all of that can still tie to an increase in human agency. And part of, and this kind of the final part of this initial answer is superagency is not just the superpowers that an individual gets. It's the superpowers that we get. So it's human agency, not just as an individual agency, but human agency also as teams, companies, industries, societies, and humanity.
Okay, so this was a great explanation, but in some sense you dodged my answer. Like you are saying you're writing for all of them, but like it's very clearly written from a bloomer perspective.
Yes.
And I would even say sometimes a little bit dismissive of the doomer's perspective. And so why is that?
Well, so I probably am most I'm probably most negative on the doomer perspective of the four, but it's partially because the only way you get to futures that you want is by steering towards those futures, not by steering away from the futures you don't want. And so this is just negative. Oh, this is just a risk. Like, for example, a classic conversation that I've had over the last couple of years is can you prove to me that we won't create Terminator robots? And the answer, of course I can't. It's both some human fool might do that deliberately, some human fool might do that accidentally. And then they say, but then doesn't that QED, precautionary principle, we should stop all work on this, we should massively slow it down until you can prove that. And it's like, well, actually, there's lots of things that I can't prove. I can't prove that, some fool won't create a pandemic, with biological things. Should we stop all biological work? No. And by the way, because the way that we navigate a future pandemic is by doing good biological work and navigating that. Similarly, the way that we navigate the killer robot is by doing good AI work and by navigating that. And so it's not to say that the future is risk-free. It's a bloomer perspective on navigating, and that the doomer advocacy actually, in fact, doesn't have the outputs that they hope that their advocacy would have for. And so that's why I'm probably a little bit more dismissive, although by including them and by being in dialogue, I'm hopefully not being overly dismissive.
Well, you definitely are respectful, but again, you are a bit dismissive. So in particular, like you talk about the precautionary principle and why it might be a little bit too strongly taken by some in the context of AI. But like when you talk about the use of data, you just says, okay, you I think are not very positive on the GDPR idea. And you say, well, we should have waited with any such regulation until we see something actually badly happens.
Mm.
But like, don't you think there is a bit of a one-way door to some of these things that yes, for some of these things, if you can unwind it, then you should probably try it and then see if something goes wrong, then you unwind it. But for some of these things, like once the data is out there, it's out there. So again, aren't you a little bit too dismissive of people who are kind of worried that some of the consequences, like we may run into some of the consequences that we will not be able to unwind once we realize they were wrong?
Well, I do think that a precautionary principle about the one-way doors that have large catastrophic impact. So that's part of the reason is, because we participated in it, is like, what are the things that where, rogue states, terrorists, other folks might use these things for, like, for example, bioterrorism. And you do want to try to prevent that. And that's worth preventing in advance. Now, but for GDPR, the fact is, the data in many ways that AI systems train out there, it's not like hacking systems. It's pulling data that's like on the internet. It's available. The data is out there already. And then the question is, well, can you use it for doing this kind of thing? And they say, well, that's not actually, in fact, necessarily a fully one-way door. And what's more, most of that is not the great harms that you're looking at when you think about like bioterrorism, right? So that's also more navigable, even if they say, well, but what if